Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Seth Nagel, Assistant Director for Annual Giving. I'll be moderating tonight's Q&A. With us, we have Track and Field Head Coach David Bobb, Cross Country Head Coach Matt Gitterin, and our Director of Athletics, Brian Barrio. Before I turn over the virtual microphone over to our panelists for introductions, please know that we'll be going through a number of questions that you all submitted prior to the start of this session. If you are joining us live and have additional questions, please feel free to use the chat Q&A feature, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. And now I'll turn it over to Coach Bobb for a brief introduction.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to our town hall with Track and Field and Cross Country. It's great to see all you. Well, can't see you guys, but I know that with COVID, it's been tough with you guys and trying to stay connected to the program, but we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. If you guys have any more, please feel free to put them in the chat down below. And we look forward to talking with you guys.
Matt, hello?
I'm still trying to figure out the whole politeness of jumping in or not here. Hey, I'm Matt Gitterman, cross country coach. Welcome everyone here. Hopefully the numbers keep going up as we go along here. But looks like we'll have an interesting time to talk about what's going on, because I know it's kind of weird. There's no meets going on, so no one has any idea what's really happening, but I'm sure there's quite a bit happening behind the scenes here.
And thank you both for agreeing to get on and speak with our alums, and thank you to all of you who are watching this either live or recorded. We've done a series of these town halls with every sport. And as Matt alluded to, we're not able to do the things that we're normally doing in terms of getting out physically at meets and at matches and at games, and communicating and mingling with our alums. And it's just really important to us that you see what's going on behind the scenes right now. It's certainly a unique and fascinating time in college athletics. Those are the positive words I could use. But for those who are who've gone through, who've had a chance to be college athletes during normal times, it is kind of an interesting conversation to hear what's happening right now with our student athletes. And, one thing I want to say before we really get into it is, both of these gentlemen, along with all of our coaches, have done an incredible job in a really challenging circumstance, staying connected with student athletes and using new technology and leveraging Zoom and WebEx and all the tools that we do have to keep the student athletes engaged, to keep them positive, and to check in on them in terms of their emotional and mental health. And that stuff has taken on a whole different level of importance this year. One of the themes, and we'll talk about it tonight, is as a department we've talked about from the beginning, it's time to get better. We don't want to waste this time. And there's going to be departments and programs that don't use this time the right way and that fall behind as a result. And our goal is to be one of the ones that really uses this break or hiatus or whatever you want to call it to get better, to get stronger. And our student athletes and our coaches have done a great job getting the athletes back on the fields and on the track and on the courts so that they can practice this fall, it's amazing what we've been able to do. But also all the other things, the connections online, the great work that our coaches have done staying with our student athletes and making sure that they're handling this well. So we'll talk about all that, but I wanted to thank the coaches first and foremost.
Thank you all, and good to see everyone tonight. I'll start off with a question for each of you, if all three of you want to give your input, starting with Coach Bobb. Question that was submitted is, given the current and continuing COVID environment, how have the coaches, department, and the university been addressing the athletes' training, team unity, spirit, and academics for the athletes staying at the school, as well as for those that are at home during this time?
Well, first of all, with academics, we told our student athletes that's something that they have to stay on top of, because that's the number one reason why they're in school. And I know obviously it's different now versus a traditional semester, but we've been continuing to make sure they're doing what they have to do, whether they're meeting with their academic advisors, making sure they're staying strong in their classes, making sure that they are doing what they need to do to matriculate throughout the university. But the good thing is most of our student athletes are still doing what they have to do from an academic to training. We are in our various cohorts, and we just got out of phase 2, I think phase 2, and moving forward, actually started phase 2. So now we're still moving along as if we would approach it as a traditional indoor season, even though we don't have our indoor championships on board with the American East. We still want to make sure that we have our student athletes if there are indoor meets, whether in Maryland, Virginia, New York, Jersey, or Massachusetts, where we traditionally compete, they'll be ready. And also making sure they have that transition from indoor to outdoor, so there's no injuries, and it'll be something that they're used to from a training standpoint since they were in high school, now moving into college.
Matt, do you want to jump in there? Anything you have to add?
Yeah, so like it's a little bit different in how we've been doing a lot of things. I know for like the cross country alumni on here, we used to do like a cross country camp. We actually did that this year, but it was virtual, so lacked a little bit of the mustard that it normally would have. We were in person, but something was better than nothing. For the kids that are on campus, their experience isn't too different from normal, but it is. But for those kids that were typically a little bit more in tune, we're a little more worried about it. The kids who are at home. Either because they live in a different state or their parents or themselves felt that it was a safer option. Those have been kind of trickier. So we've been trying to keep in contact with them, whether it's like Google Meets just so we can see them, checking in via text message, just keeping track of a running log and seeing what they're doing there, and just making sure, they're not getting the same FaceTime and the attention that everyone else is. And they're kind of, well, I don't say stuck in their homes, but for lack of a better word, they are stuck in their homes, and we want to make sure that we're kind of looking out for them because their needs are going to be completely different than the needs of those athletes who are on campus every day.
And part of the question was in regard to student athlete mental well-being and mental health. And, this fall, when unfortunately we, were required by our conference to postpone our cross-country competitions, a couple of our distance runners, our cross-country athletes, expressed to me their desire to talk to somebody about it. From a sports psychology standpoint, they expressed kind of a little bit of a malaise and a difficulty staying motivated without having that measuring stick of competitions in the fall. So we did arrange, and Matt was great. We arranged a call with a sports psychologist, a really nationally renowned sports psychologist. Met with all of our cross country student athletes in I think it was in August, and really tried to give them some tools for staying motivated, staying positive, getting through this period of time that can be really challenging. The loss of that season, and our track athletes felt it in the spring, and our cross country athletes felt it in the fall. The loss of that season's like, if you're an athlete, there's a grieving process. It's a real loss. And, part of this is managing the mental side of that. And, both from a mental health standpoint and also from staying motivated to train the right way. And I'm sure David and Matt are tuned into the training side, but we as a department have tried to stay tuned into the mental health side. So we did do that. And we've also brought in for the whole department a mental health professional who's available to student athletes on a regular basis now, so that they can talk through some of this stuff in a group setting. So we're trying to provide some resources to kind of get through what's a pretty tough time on the mental side.
Thanks, Brian. And this next question here will be for Matt and DB. You've touched on it a little bit, but are there any other specifics you'd like to share in terms of your training philosophy throughout the pandemic? And is there any potential for time trials, scrimmages, or anything of that nature in the coming months?
Well, first, we just had to get them back into some type of general conditioning because they've been off for so long. So once we did that, we're actually starting to actually train. So depending on how they progress, because we don't want to have any injuries. The worst thing we want to do right now is send someone or send a student athlete into our training room, because right now they are doing a great job with COVID, and we don't want to add another burden to them with someone with a soft tissue injury or something along those lines due to them not being ready to do something at that intensity or that speed. But I know that Coach Gitterman had a time trial last week, so I'll let him touch on that.
Yeah, training's been difficult because if you look at the actual timeline of what happened, we left in March, and at the time, it almost seemed like we were going to be back in 2 weeks. Looking back on how naive that was at the time, so we were training through for a couple weeks, thinking that we were going to come back, and then eventually, they kind of canceled it out. And then we were like, all right, well, now let's just take some time off, get ourselves mentally straightened, and let's get ready for the fall cross country season. So then we started building towards the fall season. And then cross country was canceled. So it's like, all right. And at this point, we're kind of in this holding pattern of is indoor track going to happen? I know the America East Conference Championship has been canceled, but the actual indoor season might still occur without it, either individually and national level. And in addition to that, we might have either a conference level or regional national level cross country season happening concurrently with the indoor season. So at this point, we're kind of at the mercy of the NCAA and the I guess probably them more than anyone else to kind of figure out, you know, which one are we doing, what we're gearing towards, because we kind of split the difference right now training wise. But I think the idea of the America East Indoor Championship being canceled at the conference level, that, you know, I think for me personally in my group, we're going to probably have to shift focus towards the possibility of a competitive cross country season, you know. And so, yeah, we ran a 2-mile time trial last week to kind of see where kids were at. We've been building them up for about 6-8 weeks. You know, it was a slow process. We couldn't bring them in like we would normally bring them in and start training them hard. There was more of an acclimation process than that. And then from there, you know, we might look into doing like a little cross-country time trial or something short where we just run a cross-country meet, you know, because it's been a hot minute since we did that. So like I said, it's still up in the air.
And when it comes to time trials for the sprinters, jumpers, or throwers, I know Coach Devine had a little throws meet with the throwers last week, and just to get a general assessment of where they are, and they competed in the shot down by the shed. And then we're probably going to do something with the sprinters, probably something on an off event such as a 600 or possibly a 500 for the short sprinters, and probably a 600 for the long sprinters. So we'll see how they progress. But right now, as Coach Gitterman alluded to, we've been off for so long, we want to make sure that we bring them along strategically so there's nothing that we can do to damage these student athletes. The worst thing we want to do is send them home injured, especially for Thanksgiving.
Thank you, guys. And Brian, from a leadership perspective, many athletic departments across the country are making cuts to their track and field and cross-country programs. What steps are being taken at UMBC and the athletics department to ensure these cuts will not take place here?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as we've done these town halls across the sports, this has come up on just about every call. And, you know, my answer is the same. And you know, if you look around the country at the places where these cuts are happening, you know, the typical school that's been making significant cuts. And if you look at it, it's Brown, it's William & Mary, it's Dartmouth, it's Stanford. The places that have made the big cuts are places where they have, you know, they're incredibly academically or competitive in admissions. They're places that have a waiting list and a line of thousands of students every single year. So when they for them to eliminate 100 student athletes from their program, they know that they've got 100 people or, you know, 1,000 people or 10,000 people waiting to take those spots. For the other 95% of schools in the country, that's not the case. And in a sport like cross country and track and field, where you've got, you know, the vast majority of our athletes are not on, almost none of our athletes are on full scholarship. You know, the vast majority of them are on partials or nothing at all. And, you know, in the greater economic scheme of a campus, that puts you in a much different category than Stanford swimming, Stanford field hockey, right? So the programs that have been cut across the country, like I said, they've eliminated scholarship programs because the savings for the schools largely has been in scholarships. So like a sport like cross country, track and field here at UMBC, we're not in that position. This isn't something we've even talked about just because of the underlying finances. It doesn't make any sense. You know, this is a program that unquestionably every single year is a net positive to the university financially. And by the way, I don't think about these things all financially, and David knows that. You know, it's a net positive to the university in 100 other ways, including the type of people we bring here. But financially alone, it doesn't make sense. So, you know, I want folks to kind of understand that distinction about, you know, why programs get cut, why that conversation comes up, and why it doesn't make sense for a program like ours to make that kind of decision. So that has not been something we've talked about at all. You know, I think in reality, you know, I'd be more inclined to try and make the case to add a sport or two, to try and grow our enrollment at the university. That's one of the major that's one of the major goals of UMBC as an institution right now is to grow enrollment. We want to keep growing, and you don't grow by cutting. So, I don't think that's, I think that's understood across campus, not just in athletics. So it's not something, I mean, we've got to be smart in athletics, and this program always has been. Anybody who played for Dave or ran for David or ran for Matt, they know these these guys are not they're not wasting any money. That's for sure, and they do a lot with very little. So, I'm not worried about that. I think as a department, we just need to get, and this is true across campus and across every campus right now, we have to be really smart and really efficient in our operations. But that shouldn't bring cutting programs into play. That makes people feel a little better.
And Seth, also to piggyback off of Brian with William and Mary, because their women's team, because sometimes administration doesn't understand how, even though men's and women's track and field are separate from either a Title IX or budgetary or NCAA standpoint, but that camaraderie that both the men and the women have together, like now the women are saying at Women Mary, saying that they're not going to compete unless the men's team is reinstated, because those ladies did their research. They talked on the same issues as Brian just did. If those student athletes down at Women Mary are getting $5,000, $1,000, $500 in books, but yet I think Women Mary is 60 plus, they're bringing money into the school. So that's why you have to be very strategic about what you do. And then you have to, just like how Brown backpedaled once they cut their men's track and field program, they got a lot of calls from their alums. They got a lot of calls from the other schools in the heptagonal league. And it's like, there's a way that we can save this, but it's each school has their issues, but I know that Brian has been supporting us, and we got a awesome throws cage because of that and their commitment to track and field and cross country.
Yeah, and I would, I would say, just kind of tying that question up, it is incumbent on athletics, both the coaches and myself and Seth and everybody else in athletics, to tell that story, because the folks on campus, there's always going to be, and UMBC is the most supportive place that I've been in terms of understanding what we're trying to do in athletics and how well we are in alignment with the campus. But there's always people on any campus that are just not fans of athletics, and it's really important that we're able to show the data and show the facts to back up what I'm saying here. And so we're trying to do that every day.
Thank you both. For the coaches here, we've touched a little bit on training a couple times, but in regards to such an early championship in March, will the weather play more of a role than it has in the past, as UMBC is the southernmost school in the America East Conference? May that be an advantage or even a disadvantage?
Well, you and I both know, being from Maryland, that we can have a very mild winter or we can have snowmageddon. And I know a lot of our alums that were here when we got hit with 2 back-to-back major storms. It's hit or miss, and especially having the rack offline because of the construction, it's going to be interesting to see how we can make that transition. But when it's all said and done, we only have almost a month of training left, because after the Thanksgiving break, the student athletes are going back home, and then they have to do all that training on their own. But being the southernmost school, that gives us an advantage, but also sometimes a disadvantage when we have to travel, whether to Boston for our indoor meets or to lovely Maine for our outdoor track and field championships. But when it comes to training, of course, being that this weather's been so mild, like tomorrow, because of the storm coming up, is probably going to be the most challenging day that we will have due to weather.
Matt, would you like to add anything there?
I mean, if we actually have the cross country championship in early March, I think training for us will be much easier than, say, like a school for like Maine. So we'll have a slight advantage. We'll be able to get outside, and we've always been outside, so it's not really much of a big change for us. But I would say if it's an advantage for us competitive wise in that meet, looks like they're going to probably move the meet, last time I heard, to New York. It's kind of like a halfway in between, just to save costs for everyone. They didn't like my suggestion that I'll host it where it's nice and warm, because they didn't want to travel all the way down here and spend money, but they prefer to always be cold and complain about the cold in those northern schools. So I don't know how much of an advantage or disadvantage it will be, I guess. I mean, I think it's kind of like what's your mental outlook going in there, and I don't see it being. I think training wise, we have an advantage. Racing wise, I think it'll be a push more than anything else.
And Brian, Coach Bob had mentioned briefly the RAC facility upgrades. How do you plan to balance facility/resource access in a spring that could have fall and spring sports all competing at the same time?
It's going to be a really unique and interesting challenge for us and for any school at our resource level. So if you're a Power 5 school, you may have dedicated track facilities, you may have dedicated locker room space, weight rooms, athletic trainers, all the stuff that you need to kind of run all those programs in independent silos. At UMBC, and to be fair, at virtually all of our conference competitors, we don't have that. So we're sharing resources across sports. And one of the things we count on, and this if you played here or ran here or competed here, is we share resources between fall and spring sports. So if our athletic trainer is paired with the men's soccer team, that athletic trainer may also work with women's lacrosse in the spring or baseball in the spring. And so those pairings are going to be really challenging. So that's one thing. And then the second thing, obviously, and this impacts track and field, is the track, because it's part of a facility that now we're going to have multiple teams trying to use at the same time. We've started the conversations about that already. I mean, it's October. We started in early October talking about what that looks like, what the priorities are, how we share staff, how we share space. And it's clearly going to involve extending our day. We're fortunate that we have lights, which not everybody has. So we have that, and we do have a soccer field and a lacrosse stadium, which will help as well. But we're certainly gonna have to get creative, and there's no question that people are gonna have to work real hard. And I think we're all willing to do that because we know what these student athletes gave up last spring and in the fall, and we all want to give it back to them. And one thing that I've thought about in terms of prioritizing resources is our spring athletes, and that's obviously our outdoor track and field. They lost a season already, and the fall athletes lost their season in the fall, and now we're telling them we're going to give it back to them in the spring. So to me, the absolute priority is to put those spring athletes first, because I don't want anybody to lose half their college experience, half their college athletics experience, or have half their college athletics experience compromised. So the number one priority is going to be getting those spring sports situated in a way that they have a really meaningful competitive experience. And then secondly, we're going to figure out how we give the fall athletes as much as we can. And the fall athletes have gotten the year of competition back for this year. So they'll have an opportunity, if it's at UMBC or as graduate students somewhere else or here, to use that fifth or in some cases sixth year. And that's great. And it takes a little of the pressure off, because you don't feel like somebody's losing, a massive chunk of their college career by having a bit of a truncated fall season in the spring, if that makes sense. So it's going to be complicated. We're going to extend our days, and we're going to work hard, and we're going to do the best we can.
Thanks, Brian. And while you have the virtual microphone there, and we're speaking of facilities a bit, how will the proposed improvements to the stadium complex affect track and field and cross-country programs?
To give you the real brief version, I don't know how many people on the call are familiar with the project in general. And, we're very fortunate to have gotten a significant amount of support from the state and from the system on building, a fan, engaging in a fan amenities improvement to the stadium. And it's a multi-million-dollar project. It's certainly going to make the fan experience better when you come to any event at the lacrosse stadium or baseball or softball fields. It's going to have a new entryway, a new ticket facility, a new concession stand, a kind of I don't know what the right word is, but kind of a picnic area to watch games, as well as the long overdue replacement of the press box in the track stadium, in the lacrosse stadium. So that's really important. And I think first of all, it's going to improve our ability to cover and stream and publicize track meets that take place on our facility. So that's one thing. And secondly, for any visitors that come to any of those events, you're going to see a big difference in terms of the quality of the amenities. So I think that's great, and that's step one. And then we're looking at the next step. And David alluded to, or I don't know if it was Matt or David, but alluded to the fact that we don't have the rack right now to do indoor practice. Well, one of the things we'd love to do and that's climbing very high on our priority list now as we move through the stadium project, is building some kind of indoor practice facility. I think it's critically important for all of our programs. I mean, we do, we're in Maryland. We've had a mild winter or two. I'm sure because we need a mild one this year, we probably won't get it. But we need a place where student athletes can train in the winter, and so that'll become a high priority as we move through the stadium project too. And we just want to keep, I think the way to do it is every single year we got to make the experience a little better for student athletes. We just have to chip away every single year and solve one problem, take away one obstacle, make one thing better. And if we keep doing that, we're going to look up 5, 6, 7 years from now and go, okay, we've really made some progress.
And transitioning to Matt and DB here, do you mind shedding a little light on how the recruiting process has changed during COVID, as there are fewer high school competitions and limited travel right now?
So there's been a surprisingly large amount of what I would call underground cross country and track and field meets going on, where they're being hosted by clubs and less than perfect organizations. And so, I mean, there's like full scale meets going on with like rounds of 5Ks going off on tracks, running events all the way down to 800 meters. We've had kids literally like, it's crazy because they, the junior outdoor year times are usually the big scholarship times that we're looking for. So kids train throughout the whole summer and into the fall for track. And like, there's kids that are sending us like camera in the stands, full track view of them running races by themselves. And it's impressive. I mean, these kids are running like really fast times, and it's just them out on a track with just like their phone sitting up in the top row of the bleachers. And it's clearly them, and you can time them and it's not sped up. And it's crazy how resourceful the kids have been. And one of the things, so we can't do visits till, January, but I doubt we're going to be allowed to do it in January. So like what we've been doing is like getting kids to campus. So I've been like Google meeting kids into practice. So they can get a little FaceTime on there. They're down at the track level. They can talk to the kids on the team and actually interact a little bit better than just like our normal like phone calls and emails and text messages and stuff like that. So it's definitely changed it, but the kids themselves that we're recruiting have been super adaptive about it.
And also, Coach Gitterman made an awesome virtual tour link for the recruits to see also. So that gives them a perspective of what a cross-country track and field student athlete will have here at UMBC from the facility standpoint, track, throwing area, and just the general stadium, and the park for our cross-country kids also. When it comes to the sprinters and jumpers, there's been a couple meets up there in New York for the New York Armory. They had a couple of these trials. They call the New York City Trials, but they just a good opportunity for the students to get out there and run, whether it's a 55-meter race, 55-meter hurdles, a throw events, a jump events, so that coaches can see them and actually improve their recruiting chances also, because who knows what's going to happen with the indoor season, because each state's going to have different regulations when it comes to how many people can be in the building. So these kids are being very, very proactive and very, very resourceful as the way that college coaches can get out there and try to recruit them and show that their times are legit. Because normally in the past, if somebody runs a specific time or jumps a specific distance or throws a specific distance, you can say that they're pretty good as long as they check out from an academic standpoint. But these high school kids and some transfers have been pretty resourceful.
Yeah, this is one of those areas where I've been impressed with what the coaches have done, and on a positive note, in what's kind of been a tough time, I think some of these practices we're going to be able to take with us moving forward. And one of the things that we did as a department, and I'm not sure that it's public yet, but we just took a whole bunch of drone footage of the facilities. We did a virtual tour of the event center, and these are things that we're able to share with recruits who aren't obviously physically present. And, whether it's COVID or whether it's school or whether it's finances, there's always going to be reasons why a certain recruit can't get out here. And this will give us an opportunity to really show off what we are about and what we have to folks who are not present. And that's something we couldn't have done, 6-7 months ago. So that's terrific. And, the coaches have been so resourceful. One of the things I've really found interesting is we've set up, and I'm not sure I've done this with track recruits yet, but we've done virtual official visits. for recruits in some other sports where, there's a set of meetings. They meet with me, they meet with the academic advisor, they might meet with President Hrabowski, but they're able to kind of do the tour of campus and meet with all the people they would meet with on an official visit and do it from home. And I don't know about you, but 10 months ago, I know I wasn't comfortable enough on Zoom or WebEx or setting it up, to agree to do that and feel confident it was going to work well. But now everybody, pretty much everybody in the country can do it and is equipped to do it. So, that's something that can stay with us moving forward as well. And when you think about the cost of official visits and the budgets that some of our programs have, being able to do virtual official visits is a great tool. So again, there's things about this that where, necessity becomes the mother of invention, and I think we can get better from it.
And just a quick reminder, I see that we do have a number of people that are joining us live. So feel free to use the chat function to submit any questions you may have as we move along here. For the next question, in terms of recruiting or recruits, I'll ask if any of you would like to respond to this. How's the athletic department and/or the track and field cross-country programs planning to utilize their large social media followings in order to promote, support, and advertise both the track and field and cross-country teams to potential recruits?
Well, I can feel that. I know, I don't know the age distribution of the folks on the call, and I know some are going to be alums who may have competed here 10, 15 years ago. It is incredible when you talk to student athletes today how important the social media aspect is when they're choosing schools. They want to have support in terms of publicizing their achievements, publicizing who they are in the program. And this is not a frivolous question. This is a really important question. And, we have as a department built a pretty strong following over the last 5 years on social media. And, that's been a huge focus for us this year. We're in the middle of developing a new branding concept for the department for social media, so that the look of our videos and our graphics is consistent across all of our programs, and the quality is consistent across all of the programs. So, we're really excited about kind of rolling that out through the course of this year. And I think it is important that coaches and each individual program leverage all of that as they try to, it's things like having a nice graphic for when you sign a recruit, the committed graphic, having good highlight packages, having good graphics that you can post after events or when people set records or PRs or whatever it may be. And, we've got to keep getting better at that. It's one of those it's like everything else. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. Because certainly people out there are getting better at it. We want to continue to be, we want to absolutely be on the cutting edge of that. It's the rare area in college athletics where you can be great without having great resources, without having great finances behind it. It's just a matter of creativity and the willingness to stick with it and be consistent. So, I think you're going to see a real improvement in that area over the next, I would say next year.
And that's one of the main things that recruits look at: your Twitter feed, your IG feed, and a lot of alums also, whether it's Mo Drama, whether it's Brian Cave, John Akuta, Elise Allen, Vin DeSalvo, Mike Ward, Essence Fredericks, James Oakley, Afiz, or Shoma, and Tanguy. That's how a lot of them stay connected to the program. That's how we can get information to them as soon as possible, especially if somebody breaks a record at a meet. Coach Gitterman does a great job with our social media page, and that's how they can feel connected and make sure that they know what's going on a live basis with the track and field program across country also.
Thank you both there. And DB and Matt, I'm going to put you a little bit on the hot seat here. Who are some of the athletes you expect to have a breakout season in the spring? Who's impressed you with their training during COVID?
This question comes from a sophomore on your team.
I would say it's still kind of early, but I would go with I would touch on the jumps, the sprints, and the throws, but definitely I would say Andrew Haberman, Mo in the shot, Andrew in the weight, in the jumps, Jasmine Holland in the triple and the long, Petronella in the long. In high jump, we have a freshman young lady by the name of, her name is Autumn Winston. and also Divinis in the high jump for the males. And then for the sprints, Ferris, Brian Nelson, Tyre Pierce, Glory. So there's a lot. Savannah. So it all depends on how we come back, whether they're ready to go, and what opportunities we get in the winter to get these student athletes ready to compete.
For the distance kids, you know, we had a real young team last year, and we did real good indoor. So it was like we had a lot of momentum built up for outdoor. So it was kind of sad that it didn't happen, because I think we were going to have some really big breakout performances in there. But the women's team as a whole, the returning girls from cross country, I mean, that time trial that we ran on, I think last Friday, pretty much showed they're already, with very little speed training and any real formal training, back to where they were peaking for indoor. So if we get to a cross country meet, it's not going to be the biggest team we've ever had out there. It's going to be a small group of like 7 to 9 girls, but they're going to be one of the better teams we've had, probably in the program for a long time. And then, you know, looking over the men's side, you know, they're just a little bit more track based at this point. A lot of talent's going to be in those miles and 800s when we finally get to them. But what's been nice, if there's been any good thing about this whole fall, was a lot of the guys who are going to contribute for us in cross country, and it might be as many as 5 guys in our top 7 are going to be freshman boys. So, and if you had to run those kids in an 8K in September and October, they wouldn't quite be prepared for it. But now, kind of for getting those COVID red shirts for cross country and indoor, essentially, you know, they're going to be in a better position to contribute in the first year than they normally would be able to do. And that's in addition to a couple kids we got coming back as well. I think it's just a matter for the men, just getting everyone back on campus and training, so we kind of see, because we have a little bit more scattered men than we do on the women's side.
All right, our next question can be for all 3 of you here. A few years ago, we were the host for the conference outdoor championships. We seem to have a really nice turnout of track and field alumni at a luncheon. Is there a possibility of doing more types of these alumni events in the future?
Yeah, that's something that we got a lot of requests for, because you had so many different alums, from Mike Ward, and he was one of Coach Frogner's student athletes. Coach Frogner was actually there. Dr. Brown, former AD, was there also. So there were so many different people there in the room. It was a great turnout, and plus they got to see the meet. So it was just like a perfect storm. 1, the weather was great. 2, the event center just opened up, so they were in the retriever room overlooking the track, watching the meet. The team did very well. So it was a great place to showcase the school, showcase the team, and the new event center also. Now, in the past, what we would try to do, we'll try to have something with the team over my house, or we'll try to have the kickoff dinner. We kind of took a hiatus from that due to some various reasons. But we're going to try to see if we can get those going again. And that's just making sure that the kids feel connected and they can actually meet the older alums and network and try to see, well, this guy's a mechanical engineer. This young lady is doing something in my field. So it's just getting that connection there, because there's a lot of track and field alums out there. We want to make sure that they can stay connected and make sure that they can move on to the next phase of their life once they graduate from UMBC.
This is a really great question. I keep saying this, but this is a really great question too. You know, if you don't know Seth, those of you who are on the call, Seth is our point person in the department on alumni relations and advancement. And, you know, Seth and I have had a lot of conversations about trying to help support coaches better with these kinds of events. You know, to me, and you know, track and field's in a special kind of an advantaged position here, because David's been here so long and has such a personal connection with so many of our alums, going back quite a long way. But there's other sports where that's not been the case, and where, you know, we want to help foster a really close connection between all of our athletics alums and the department. And so, you know, I think 2 things we want to do are, 1, help with exactly these types of events and give departmental support to these types of events, so that you feel like you're part of what's going on here and you can come back anytime and join us, and not have to tell anybody who you are, but just show up in your home. And, you know, so that's something we're going to be working on, and working with every coach on trying to develop exactly what works, because it's probably a little bit different for each sport depending on, you know, a lot of variables. But, you know, that's one piece. So you hit on something really key there. The other one, and you've given me a really good opportunity to plug this, is we're in the process right now of rolling out a letter winners club, a formal letter winners club for the department. And the idea behind the letter winners club, it's free of charge to join. You're going to get a registration link for that club with the follow-up email from this event, I think, right, Seth? Yes. So the club is just about creating a formal connection between all of our former student athletes and the department. And we want to have a connection, maybe your personal relationship with your coach, or personal relationships with somebody you may have had in the department who may have left 10 years ago. We want you to feel like if you played or participated in a sport at UMBC anytime from 1968 to the present, you are part of this family and you're welcome back anytime. And like I said, you don't have to tell us who you are. We want to make sure you're comfortable coming back, bringing your family back, and that you're recognized as an athlete. And so you're going to get more information about that, but I really urge you all to register for that, and also to push your old teammates to register for it, so that you can be part of that club. And part of that is going to be department-wide special events, special tailgates. We'll probably try and do something around a basketball game every year, a tailgate type event in the spring, something around homecoming, where you'll have exclusive opportunities for whether it's free beverages or just access to an exclusive event. But the idea is we want you to come back and we want you to be part of this, and we want people to feel like they're Retrievers for life. And it's really critically important to the program. If you competed here, how important it was that the people who competed before you were still around and gave back and were engaged and helped. And whether it was helping you find your first job or whether it was donating to the program so you had uniforms, there's a million different ways we can all help. But we all know everybody wants to. You want to feel like you're part of what's going on here if you're going to do that, and that's what the Letter Winners Club is all about. So, in addition to trying to support those events that David talked about and that were part of this question, we also want to give you other opportunities as well. So, keep an eye out for that when you get the email, and make sure you register.
Thanks, Brian. I do want to give a quick shout out to some of our track and field and cross country alumni. It's been about 2 weeks now since we officially launched the club, and a large percentage actually is track and field and alumni members who have already registered. Again, that information will be sent in the follow-up email. And speaking of alumni events, I won't read this live question that came in the Q&A chat function verbatim, but DB, Matt, and even Brian, is there any possibilities of creating an alumni event similar to what some of our other teams do, where it's alumni versus the current team or current student athletes? It mentions here maybe an alumni decathlon versus the current student athletes, or anything of that nature. Does anyone want to tackle that question there?
Yeah, normally what we would try to do is we used to have the 5K dog chase, but that was during homecoming. But we kind of steered away from that because it kind of was a weird weekend, because we wanted the whole team there, but most of the cross country kids, sometimes it's on and off a year. Matt sometimes isn't there because he's at a cross country meet with the team. So what we were going to try to do, we would try to do something similar, and that was a good question too, Vinny. Trying to do something that we can give so that, one, the whole team's there, and then it's an event where everybody can compete and safely. That's number one, because some of these alums are on the couch and we don't want them out there pulling a hammy, okay? And I'm one of them. So we want to make sure that it's something that we can do for the people competing and the current student athletes. But that's a great idea, and that's something that we can probably sit down and talk about and kind of iron out and try to see if we can do that homecoming in the morning or something where it fits everyone's schedule, or off weekend where we're not competing cross indoor or outdoor.
I'm glad. I love the idea, and and Vinny, that's a great question, because I love the idea of bringing back alums to come do anything to interact with our current student athletes. I was a little scared about the decathlon though, because I know we used to do a fantasy football camp at USC, and all our old friends would come back, and man, it looked like a MASH unit after the Normandy invasion. After that thing, it was hamstrings gone left and right. So you made me nervous.
All right, we actually we have one more question. Combined.
If we do have a racing event, I like to challenge John Aputa, because I think I can beat him.
That's on tape now.
Yeah, just a lot of people are going to see this, Coach. So we'll see. Again, we do have one more question that was submitted in advance, and I'll combine it with another question that Vinny had mentioned here. And this will be open for all of you to respond if you'd like. How can alumni best support the current department, the programs, track and field and cross country? And then for the live portion of it, Vinny had asked, what should alumni donate back to the program? How's the money used or distributed?
Well, let me field it from a larger perspective, and then I think it's important that David and Matt talk about the programs individually. This is a great question, and before I give to my alma mater, I always ask that question. I want to know what the impact's going to be, and I think it's really important to know that we're in a good position in terms of our advancement structure here at UMBC. Any money that you give, any donation that you make to the track and field program or to the cross country program is put into a discretionary fund for that program. So you're not going to give that money to David to support what's going on over on the track, and I'm going to take it and use it for women's basketball or men's basketball. That's not going to happen. That money becomes discretionary funding for the coach to help the program do extra things. And so in our situation, obviously part of our operational budget comes from fundraising. So part of our ability to compete and put uniforms on student athletes and put track shoes on student athletes and all that stuff comes from fundraising. So that's really important. But like I said, any kind of extra, if there's a year where David feels like he's got a really strong squad and he wants to go to an additional meet or he has a different plan for travel, this is what would give him the ability to do that. If he wants to add extra meals for nutrition, things along those lines as benefits for the student athletes to help their experience, that's where that would come from. So, our ability to take the program to kind of the next level totally depends on that support. And if your question, so that's the question of where the money goes. But the question about why you should give, to me, if you competed here, you know the experience you had at UMBC, and you know the kind of place this is, the kind of people we have, and certainly the kind of people that are next to me on this call, David and Matt. And for our current student athletes, they are depending on those like you to give back, to help them have the kind of experience you had, and maybe take it a step further and have a little bit better experience, and be more competitive, and have just have more opportunity. I know that if you're on this call and you're listening and you're engaged enough to be here, that you care. So that's why I'd say it's worth giving. It's worth giving because we've got great people in the program, great young men and women, and great coaches.
And Vinny, just to touch on how it's distributed, what I normally do and what Coach Gitterman and I normally do, we normally discuss how we can take those funds and benefit the whole team, whether it's cross country, indoor track, or outdoor track. But while you were here, most of those funds were for the starting block dinner. I think we had it at Arundel Preserve one year. Next year, we had it at BWI Sheraton. And then the year after that, I think we had it at Arundel Preserve again. So that's a good place for parents to come out and see the team, see the student athletes, and just to bring alums as one alum for a keynote speaker. But that's the way that we use those funds so that everybody can benefit from those funds that we generate through fundraising or additional revenue streams.
We actually have another question that came in here from Vinny. I think I know the answer to this, but I won't speak out of line, so I'll direct it towards you, Matt, and/or DB. Is there currently a UMBC catalog of apparel or clothing, whether it be Under Armour or anything of that nature, that's on the bookstore that alumni can purchase that may have track and field or cross country logo on it?
Currently, at this time, I don't think so. I can speak with Nick Bazika. I know sometimes during the year they open up various sports stores with Under Armour, but I think that's more of I don't know if that's something in the contract that we can talk about, or if there's something that they might need and we might have some extras down in the equipment room. We can also see what the fair market value of those pieces of clothing are, and we can actually have our alums buy some there also.
Yeah, we get this question quite a bit, and it's a good question because obviously you want to be able to purchase the same quality stuff that our student athletes are wearing. We're working on it. I know the bookstore is terrific, and they do have some apparel. If that stuff's not to your taste, reach out to us and let us know kind of what you're looking for, and I'm sure we can figure out a way to make it happen. If we start to hear the same things, we can also work with the bookstore and with Under Armour to kind of stock some of that stuff. The more feedback we get, the better tailored our selection will be to especially to our alums.
Thank you, guys. So those are all the questions that we have for tonight. I'll go ahead and hand it back over to the three of you for closing remarks. And Brian, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, I'll go first. The last word to be with the important people. But, yeah, I just want to say, first of all, thank you to anybody who's I can see online. There's a lot of people listening right now, and hopefully you'll share this. I mean, the number one thing I could ask you to do besides going and making a gift to the cross country or track and field program is to share this and with your old teammates, with folks who may not be as engaged as you are, and ask them to take a look, because we really want you to feel like part of this family. That's critically important. But I just want to say, in addition to thank you to all of you, thank you to these coaches. This pandemic and this whole situation last year has really, it's like when the tide goes out, you really see what shape the boats are in. And this has exposed a lot of our coaches as really terrific people, really quality people. And to see how both of these two men have responded to this challenge, and the way they've been role models for the student athletes, the way they've been flexible and compassionate and all the things we need them to be during a really tough time, I couldn't be more impressed and more proud to work with them. So again, thank you. And thanks for joining us tonight.
And I'd just like to thank everybody that came and just listened to us. I know that it's been a challenge with this current situation, but we're still here for you. If you guys want to reach out to myself or Coach Gitterman, don't be a stranger. You guys have our numbers. If you guys just want to come with some more ideas as alums, how you can be engaged with the current team and bring your former or former teammates back into the fold, let us know, and we'll be more than happy to help work with you.
I mean, we're tired. I'm tired of teaching virtually. We want to get these kids back on campus. We want to get these competitions going. Put on your mask and wash your hands. That's the best way you can help. Please, this is getting old. It's been going on way too long. We're tired.
Amen.
Well, hey, thank you again for joining us tonight, everyone. We'll be sending out the link via email of this recording, so please feel free to send along to as many former teammates as possible. And feel free to reach out to us, any of us, with any questions you may have or comments as we continue to move forward and kind of navigate this pandemic in this fiscal year. We hope to see you all soon, and stay safe and healthy, and have a great night. Thank you, and go Dogs.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Enjoy your evening.